I'm Jake Ward in for Joshua Johnson. It's good to be with you on this Friday, June 3rd. Here is some of what we're talking about tonight. On the same night President Biden called for tougher gun control laws, 2 women were shot and killed outside a church in Iowa. From Buffalo to Uvalde to Tulsa and now Iowa. The last few weeks have played out like scenes of relentless gunfire. We'll tell you what New York State has done in response. Plus, any day now, the Supreme Court will issue a ruling that could mean more handguns in more public places. We'll get a sense on where the decision is especially relevant. And the Johnny Depp Amber Heard verdict has led to plenty of responses that seem to undermine the credibility of abuse survivors. We'll talk to a researcher who just might have the data to explain that. In his address last night, President Joe Biden said the Second Amendment, quote, is not absolute. It's not unlimited. And now the Supreme Court is poised to weigh in. The case before the court is the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin. It's over New York's strict licensing laws for carrying concealed handguns outside the home. Currently, New York's laws require a resident seeking a license to carry a firearm has to demonstrate proper cause to obtain one. Courts call that a, quote, special need for self-protection. But challengers to the law argue that restrictive concealed carry laws violate the Second Amendment. This will be one of the most significant rulings on the issue in more than a decade. Let's talk about this more with Eric Rubin. He's an assistant professor of law at the Southern Methodist University's Dedman School of Law. He's a fellow at the Brennan Center, and he studies criminal law and the Second Amendment. Welcome to the program, Professor Rubin.
Thanks for having me on.
So let's talk first about this particular case. What do you think the implications could be for the country?
So this is a very significant case. Back in 2008, for the first time in the Supreme Court's history, in a case called Heller, the justices held by a 5-4 margin that the Second Amendment protects an individual right to possess a handgun in the home. But this case talks about whether or not that right to have a handgun in the home extends beyond the home into public places. This is going to be the first time that the Supreme Court is deciding on the scope of the Second Amendment outside the home, where gun carriers can interact with other members of the public. As you mentioned in your introduction, this case deals with New York's regime, which requires an applicant to carry a concealed handgun in public to show a special need for self-defense, proper cause. And the applicants in this case couldn't do that. So they were denied an unrestricted permit. Instead, they received permits to carry their handguns to and from work and to some other places. And they say that that policy of requiring a heightened need for self-defense is unconstitutional. And if the court agrees with them, if the court strikes down New York's proper cause regime, then that would affect people throughout New York and also in 8 other fairly populated states where a similar regime is in place. And in those places where 80 million Americans live, you could expect more people to be carrying handguns in public under an adverse ruling to New York.
And do you expect that the across those 8 states, which I presume, are some of the most restrictive gun laws we have in the country, we know that New York certainly is one of those places, if it metastasizes beyond those states, will it become, do you think, a de facto national standard? As New York goes, does the rest of the country go?
Yeah, I think that if the court does require New York to set the constitutional floor at issuing more permits without concern for whether or not someone has a heightened need for self-defense, then that will indeed be the constitutional floor. The states other than the 8 states that I referred to before already have that sort of regime, or some of them don't require a license at all to carry a handgun in public. So in that regard, New York, though once its policy was common throughout the country, is now in the minority of states in terms of requiring this heightened showing before someone can carry a handgun in public.
So I guess I want to sort of zoom out and try to imagine what all of this might look like to someone, let's say, from another country. I once visited Tanzania and went to a gun shop there, and asked the people there, what does it take to buy a gun here in Tanzania? And they explained to me this extraordinary process one had to go through of having to get certification from a doctor, from local police. You even needed permission from your neighbors, each one with an adjacent property, in order to have a gun. And then you had to re-up that permission every time you wanted to buy more ammunition. I compare that to what you are describing here. And I guess I just wonder, as someone who studies the Constitution and how the Second Amendment interacts with criminal law, I mean, how distinct is this in the United States as compared to how people think about guns in the rest of the world?
Yeah, so it certainly is exceptional in the United States, at least with respect to the developed world, in terms of how easy it is to get a gun and how easy it is to carry guns in most of the country. In fact, there are 400 million guns by some estimates right now, more than one per American. And the trend is for that number just to continue to rise. So I think when you talk to foreign press, and I do talk to foreign press, a lot of times there is a lack of understanding about how this can be the case in the United States. But this is a country with a strong gun culture and with the Second Amendment, and it's the Second Amendment that is getting increasingly interpreted in a more robust way. So it does separate the United States out in terms of the difficulty or ease for acquiring and then carrying a firearm. And what this case is going to do is, if in 2008 the Supreme Court already established that all law-abiding adults have a right to have a gun in the home, this case would in essence be saying all law-abiding adults have a right to carry a handgun in public places.
And so given that, and given, as you say, the sort of, the constantly expanding scope of the Second Amendment, I wonder what you make of what President Biden had to say last night about the idea that the Second Amendment is not unlimited, not absolute. How do you end up feeling about that? At this point, I'm sorry, everyone, we seem to have lost Professor Rubin, but I want to thank him so much for joining us tonight. He seems to be back. Professor Rubin, thank you so much for sticking with us. Yeah. So I just want to ask you, last night President Biden spoke about the Second Amendment not being unlimited and not being absolute. And so I wonder what you make of that, given, as you've pointed out so eloquently to us tonight, the Second Amendment is only expanding in its scope.
Yeah, well, the point that President Biden made, I think, is an important one. And in fact, it's one that's on the face of the lodestar Second Amendment opinion for gun rights advocates, Heller. Heller made clear in Justice Scalia's majority opinion that the Second Amendment is not unlimited because no right is unlimited. In fact, the court went to great extent to even list out presumptively lawful regulations, like limitations on the ability to have a firearm if you're convicted of a felony or mentally ill, or carrying guns into sensitive places like government buildings and schools. So that case made clear that the Second Amendment is not an unlimited provision. And I think it's really important to keep that in mind, especially as you hear in the political sphere and often in the public sphere, individuals saying that, well, that gun restriction, because it is some sort of limitation on my right to have or carry or use a firearm, violates my Second Amendment rights. That's just not how the Second Amendment works. It's not how the way it's been interpreted in the courts. I doubt that it's going to get interpreted as an unlimited right in the current Supreme Court. And I think that President Biden was just reminding the public about that basic fact.
And quickly here, as we end, I just want to know, I mean, we're seeing the goalposts continue to move, especially if this Supreme Court case, if the decision goes the way you described it might. What do you think gun advocates would want after that, after it has become possible to basically have a gun in a public place? What's the next goalpost from what you have studied of this issue?
Well, I mean, there's more that could happen with respect to public carry. There are hundreds of gun laws out there. In fact, after Heller in 2008, there have been over 1,400 challenges to various gun, knife, taser, other weapons law on the grounds that they violate the Second Amendment. So there's a lot of litigation. There's a lot of ground to cover. And one of the things I'm going to be looking for in this case is how much the Supreme Court says about other restrictions that might be permissible for regulating guns in public, such as restricting firearms in sensitive places, in which case the debate and the litigation will shift to deciding whether or not a given issue is sensitive, a given place is sensitive enough to restrict firearms there, and whether or not the Supreme Court nods to how other Second Amendment issues like assault rifle bans and large capacity magazine bans should be
Yeah.
decided. It's possible that the Supreme Court sets down a new methodology, says that the way that those 1,400 cases have been decided over the past 13 years is the wrong way. And if the court goes that far, then it will have massive implications for all of the challenge weapons laws.
Yeah. Professor Eric Rubin charting the future of gun regulation for us. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Still to come, hundreds of people are shot every day in this country, and many survive, all because of trauma doctors. We'll speak to an emergency medicine doctor who is now working to end gun violence as a whole. It's been 2 days since the verdict was announced in the defamation trial between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, but it feels like the public opinion verdict was decided weeks ago. On the Today Show yesterday, Amber Heard's attorney suggested that the social media campaign against her client may have even influenced the jurors.
They're admonished every single day, don't look at it. Do you think they did see it?
How can you not? They went home every night. They have families. The families are on social media. We had a 10-day break in the middle because of the judicial conference. There's no way they couldn't have been influenced by it. And it was horrible. It really, really was lopsided. And I appreciate your saying that. It's like the Roman Colosseum, you know, how they viewed this whole case.
It's important to note here that Johnny Depp's camp says that they did not pay for any influence, that it was all organic. Now, we may never know how that online sentiment actually shaped the jury's decision, but the question is, did the anti-Heard attacks follow a specific pattern? And broadly, what does the virality of the trial on social media mean for court disputes in the future? Joining us now is Christopher Boozy. He's founder of Bot Sentinel, a firm hired by Heard to investigate the social campaign against her. Christopher Boozy, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us a little bit about your involvement in the case and your background as a researcher looking into social media and how behavior works online.
Sure. We were contacted to look into the activity. My firm is known for researching mis and disinformation and targeted attacks on social media platforms. So we were, pretty well known to her attorneys, and they wanted us to look at the activity.
Now, I want to show you here a chart that shows over the span of a month that the Depp-Heard trial garnered significantly more engagement online than world-changing events, Biden, abortion, the Russia-Ukraine war. And I'm wondering what your research found about the extraordinary amount of engagement we saw here.
Sure. We automatically found that there were inauthentic accounts pushing out mis and disinformation about Ms. Heard. We initially found 300 accounts that were created specifically to tweet about Ms. Heard, negative stuff, obviously, and while at the same time tweeting out positive stuff about Mr. Depp.
And when you describe this as inauthentic accounts, let's talk about that for a second, right? I think of, an everyday person starts an account, has some opinions about a thing. How do you differentiate between inauthentic accounts and, just rabid fans who want to put their opinion out onto social media in the way that it's designed?
Right. So, normally when you have fans, they will tweet about a specific topic sometimes. But at the same time, they will also talk about, different things. These accounts were created specifically to go after Ms. Heard, and many of the accounts were coordinating. So with one account would tweet something, several accounts and within that network will also either retweet or tweet the same exact, thing. So those are some of the signs we look for. Also, some of the accounts that we were monitoring were suspended by Twitter days after they were created. So apparently Twitter also was able to determine that some of these accounts were, part of like a influence campaign or platform manipulation.
And when you describe this as platform manipulation, influence campaign, how common is this? Where have you seen this in other cases in your work?
Sure. We just recently did research regarding Meghan Markle, and we also found similar activity. We were able to find out who exactly was behind that campaign. And then also with Lisa Page as well, we did research and looked into the activity with her. And similar activities, similar signals, accounts created specifically to target her, accounts created specifically to push certain hashtags about her.
And I want to make clear here, because I want to understand it, you're talking about 300 accounts in the case of Amber Heard and Johnny Depp that your research identified as being inauthentic. We're talking about a case in which, on TikTok alone, there were nearly 20 billion views of the hashtag Justice for Johnny Depp. So 300 accounts sounds like an extraordinarily small number, just a drop in the ocean of sentiment when it comes to this. So how much influence can a group that small have over sentiment online?
So that's a misconception, especially with Twitter. A small number of accounts can influence, large. For example, just a few dozen accounts, if you have the right followers, can amplify whatever you're pushing out, whether it be verified users known as blue checks, or just larger accounts with a larger number of followers. So just a few dozen accounts can definitely influence conversations on Twitter and other platforms as well.
And how much technical sophistication and, let's be frank, how much money does it take to create a coordinated campaign like you're describing?
Right. So when we looked at this, it was early 2020. The activity is still happening as we're talking right now.
2 years later.
It's been ongoing. And even now that the trial is over, it's still continuing. So in regards to how much something like this costs, it just depends on the client. It depends on how long you're going to be doing this for, how many users or how many fake accounts are going to be pushing out this information. So we're talking a few thousand to a few million. It just all depends on the client. In terms of sophistication, if you would have asked me this in 2016 with the presidential election and foreign influence, I would say you had to have a pretty sophisticated setup to do something like this. It's not that way anymore. You could just get average users to just set up something, and they're able to influence conversations on any platform.
Now, I listened to you describe this, and I can't help but think, what does this mean for the future? I'm thinking about, a new case, Evan Rachel Wood and Marilyn Manson. That's another defamation coming up. We'll see endless numbers of these. I'm wondering if you think there is a sort of an industry around this as a service that you can imagine happening in the future.
Definitely. You can go to certain firms and ask to have this done, whether it's for defamation cases, whether it's politics, you're going after an opponent, or if you're just trying to amplify yourself and make yourself look better, the sky's the limit. So this is not something that's going away anytime soon.
Christopher Bouzy, CEO of Bot Sentinel, thank you so much for your time. I'm joined now by Jennifer Freund. She's the founder of the Center for Institutional Courage and is an expert in the role of memory and the defensive strategies of perpetrators in cases of abuse and trauma. Welcome, Professor Freund.
Thank you.
I want to ask you first about a term that you coined. It's an acronym, DARVO, and it stands for, as I understand it, deny, attack, reverse, victim, and offender. You use it to describe a pattern of behavior in people defending themselves against charges that they have perpetrated some sort of wrongdoing. Tell me about that research. How did you arrive at that term, and how common is it?
Yes, well, it's a term that I first named in the 1990s, so quite a while ago. And one of the main sources of inspiration for me was watching the hearing between, really the confirmation hearing for Clarence Thomas, and of course, the testimony of Anita Hill. And I was struck by the way Anita Hill was treated by lots of people, but in particular Thomas, because he had been a leader of the EEOC, and his job had been to understand the nature of oppression and discrimination and sexual violence. And if he was accused of something he felt he didn't do, an option he had in this case was to say, oh my goodness, I'm really horrified and saddened to hear that this is how you remember things. It's not how I remember things, but I want to understand more about why you're saying this. And I know how difficult these conversations are to have. That to me would have made sense for him to have said that given his background and understanding. But that's not what happened at all. He and many other people attacked Anita Hill. They, of course, denied what she was alleging, but much more important, they attacked her credibility. And the most pernicious part is the RVO, that's reverse victim and offender. And what happens when that occurs is that the person who's bringing forward an allegation gets cast into the role of being the offender of a wrongdoing, and the person being accused takes the victim role.
You've gone on in your research to establish that this happens time and time again, that this acronym really can be applied over and over again to these cases that we've seen. And I guess I'm wondering, I mean, I hear that and I think, well, are people somehow coordinating this? Is there some terrible, planning going on such that this strategy has become so common? Or are you describing something that just has come up, right? I mean, why is this a pattern that your acronym describes so accurately?
That's a totally good question, and we don't know the answer. We have conducted research and published it in peer-reviewed journals. We do know something about DARVO. We have a measurement instrument for it, but there's a whole lot we don't know. It's just at the beginning of our research, and it's in fact one of the reasons I formed a nonprofit was to research this phenomenon and related kinds of problems. We do know from research that the behavior hangs together. If somebody attacks the credibility of an accuser, they're also more likely to take the victim role. We also know that women are more likely to be DARVO'd, to be the victims of DARVO. And we know that when somebody is DARVO'd, they're more likely to blame themselves. I think one of our most important findings, however, is that third parties who observe DARVO, if they're not educated about DARVO, they tend to find it effective. That is, if they observe somebody using DARVO, they doubt the victim. The good news is that if we teach people about the concept and the behavior, they're much better able to identify it and be less swayed by it. But the question of where does it come from? When I observed it, it didn't have a name. Presumably, it may be part of the culture. Maybe it just emerges on its own. I do know that people can and do respond without DARVO. It's not inevitable. Sometimes people say, well, if you've been accused of something you didn't do, of course you're going to DARVO. And as I was saying earlier, no, there are other ways you can respond that both assert your innocence without shutting down a conversation.
The thing that is so striking about the research that you've done is that now this framework that you invented to essentially analyze something that was happening is now being used in legal circles as a way of describing a strategy for the courtroom. And in fact, the reason that we are talking to you here in the context of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard is that it was just mentioned in a broadcast in the UK by a very esteemed lawyer who described DARVO by name as a possible reason that the jury went one way. I want to play you a little bit of what he had to say.
Is that research shows that it's very effective with juries who are much more likely to effectively follow their instincts, their visceral instincts. So, if you're thinking about it, was he a wife beater? Well, what does it matter that she was accused of having an affair with Elon Musk or anyone else? Yeah. What does it matter that she is accused of hitting him? Because that isn't proof, it's not relevant as to whether or not he hit her. None of these things go to the truth or falsity of whether or not he's a wife beater.
Okay.
But all of that stuff was heard by the jury in America, and they were never told about the judgment in London.
On the one hand, you can imagine people using your framework to just analyze things after they have happened. On the other hand, I think it's very clear that we're now seeing lawyers thinking about it as a way of describing something to a jury. And I wonder for you what it's like to see this being used, in a sense, as a possible strategy in the courts.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of horrifying thought that I provided a tool to be used in a way that I think actually is harmful to individuals and to society. And I don't know. I mean, defense lawyers, before I ever named Darvo, used Darvo-like strategies. They didn't have that term, but I mean, it was very common, for instance, for a defense in a sexual violence situation to attack the credibility of the victim and to reverse victim and offender. Now that they have the term, are they using it more systematically? Perhaps. And that, that's very worrisome. The thing I will, though, remind you is that when people know about it, they're less likely to be swayed by it. So if it's a secret weapon that only some people have, that's dangerous. But if everybody knows about it, it's probably going to be less effective.
Professor Jennifer Fried, who originated a framework for understanding the way perpetrators defend themselves and hopefully is getting word out about how we can all understand how to be more resistant to it. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
We'll have much more when we come back. We are glad you're with us for Now Tonight from NBC News. More than 300 people become victims of gun violence every day in this country, and more than 100 of them lose their lives. This is according to the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence. These statistics were put into striking context yesterday, right before the president gave a speech pushing for stricter gun laws in Ames, Iowa. A man shot and killed 2 women at a church there and then killed himself. 2 more women were shot at a funeral in Racine, Wisconsin yesterday. Both of them are expected to survive. Last night in his speech, the president ticked off a list of deadly mass shootings. They've been coming at a pace of more than 2 a day. Honestly, it's hard to keep up. Think about it this way. According to the Gun Violence Archive, there have been at least 20 of them since Uvalde, which came 10 days after the deadly racist shooting at a supermarket in Buffalo, New York. President Biden's proposed a series of measures aimed at curbing this type of violence, like banning assault weapons and new so-called red flag laws, which would take guns away from people at great risk of hurting themselves or others. Now, while we're still trying to figure out whether any of this will move through Congress, states are taking matters into their own hands, like here in New York State, where the legislature passed a broad package of gun bills yesterday. They appear to be a direct result of the Buffalo and Texas shootings. The sheer relentlessness of gun violence in the United States sets this country apart. And now I want to bring in Dr. Garen Wintemute. He specializes in emergency medicine at the University of California at Davis, but he's also the director of a unique violence prevention research program there. It's one that was created to fill a void in our understanding of gun violence in this country. Good evening, Doctor.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I want to talk first about these appalling statistics we just went over. 300 people injured each day, 100 people, that's 2 full city buses, killed every day by guns. And that violence is estimated to cost the American economy over $220 billion. So I guess I'm wondering, what is it in your research that suggests that, how do we explain the unique American quality of this problem?
Let's start by examining what it's not. We are not a uniquely violent people. Our rates of assaultive violence generally are on a par with those of other wealthy industrialized countries. What sets us aside is our access to firearms. We have a unique level of access to a technology that changes the outcome of violence. That's what sets us apart. And we have to remember that most fatal firearm violence in the United States is self-inflicted. It's suicide, about which we talk far too little.
And when you think about the creation of your own research center, I mean, it was created at a time when federal rules essentially prohibited federal money being spent on that research. And I remember reading the news at the time that California was going to put money into trying to fill this national void. Tell us about the creation of it, and what are you now in a position to establish that we could not establish on the federal level before now?
Sure, I will be brief. First off, there was never a ban on research at the federal level per se, or funding for research, but that's how the language was interpreted. I think what everybody will agree on is that there was never anywhere close to enough money being spent on this important health problem. It's as if we had decided, let's not do research on HIV/AIDS or motor vehicle injuries or heart disease or cancer. Let's just let this health problem proceed. California decided to take a different track and to pay for the compilation of the evidence that would allow our state to make good policy. So we conduct policy evaluations. We do surveys here in California on firearm violence, exposure to it and its consequences. We have a nationwide survey that just came out of the field yesterday, looking at extreme beliefs and a willingness to commit violence, and in specific political violence. We're going to have results from that survey at the beginning of July.
And based on the research that you have done, what are tried and true methods of violence prevention? I mean, what can come into play when we're looking at instances like Uvalde, like Iowa, like Racine?
Yep. So a caveat, that effort to prevent research from being done was largely successful. So the body of knowledge we would ordinarily have doesn't exist. And that was done deliberately. So we need to keep that in mind. That said, there is good evidence that requiring background checks for all purchases of firearms is helpful, particularly when permits are required. There is good evidence that expanding criteria for denial of firearm purchase to include all people who've been convicted of a violent crime is helpful. The irony is, here in California, we've done a lot of things, and so it's hard to isolate the impact of any one policy. But just half an hour before the show, I finished a manuscript that will go out tomorrow, showing that before we did all those things, California's firearm violence death rate was substantially higher than the rate for the rest of the country. Having done all those things, and with 20 years or so for them to take effect, our rate of firearm violence is now more than 60% lower than the rate for the rest of the country. I can't prove that the bundle of policies made the difference, but I don't see an alternative.
And when you think about the incremental changes that we are seeing now being very passionately argued, now we're talking right about age, raising the age at which you can buy a semi-automatic assault rifle from 18 to 21, right? Can that make a difference, or does your research suggest that we need an all-out assault weapons ban like the one President Biden has proposed?
Well, and like the one California has. Mass shootings are less common in California than in many other states because we have restricted access to that particular subtype of firearm designed to kill a lot of people in a hurry that, surprise, is used to kill a lot of people in a hurry here in the United States. On raising the age, that is a small incremental change. I suspect that it would make a difference. I'm not sure it would make a difference that we can measure. And I have to add that California has had such a policy in place, and it was just overturned by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. So it's not clear that that policy will withstand judiciary scrutiny when it's enacted in other states, as I suspect it will be in New York.
And I just want to end here with something that I learned recently, which is that in the United States, trauma surgery, as we understand it, penetrating trauma, the treating of gunshot wounds, is more or less unique as a medical discipline here. Only a couple of other countries, developed economies like Israel, for instance, have it. If you were to be shot in a capital city anywhere else in the world, they really wouldn't know what to do with you because they don't have this kind of violence. So I'm wondering, what makes trauma such a unique American discipline here?
Again, it's the access to the technology. I work at a civilian trauma center. It's across the street from where I'm sitting. Our military surgeons come here to train because they can get combat-type trauma in any big city in the United States. I've talked with trauma surgeons in other countries who've gone through their entire careers and maybe treated 1 or 2 gunshot wounds in their home countries in their entire careers. And any big hospital trauma center in the United States gets several a day. Again, access to technology is the fundamental difference. And I will end with this. We have more than 400 million guns in private hands in the United States. Policies that we are going to enact now simply have to take account of that. We are de facto restricted to harm reduction in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Garen Wintemute, thank you so much for your time.
A pleasure. Thank you for having me.
We got a strong jobs report today, but a couple of things are still not quite adding up. It tells us a little bit about the strange moment we're in. We'll explain it to you when we come back. The monthly jobs report is out, but wait. Don't close your laptop. Don't close the NBC app. I know I'm the kind of person who would tune out when those words come up, but I think you want to listen to this. Because this month's report was, well, sure, it was what we expected. About 390,000 jobs were created in May, and for the 3rd month in a row, unemployment remained at about 3.6%. Overall wages grew by about 5.2% in the last year, but that's still below the inflation rate, which was at 8.3% in April. Now, a lot of Americans are feeling the burden of these higher costs. Today, President Biden said it's a, quote, Putin price hike.
But it's important that we understand the root of the problem so we can take steps to solve it. I've been upfront with the American people from the outset that there would be a cost here at home of Putin's decision to brutally and savagely invade a sovereign nation.
We're talking here about a world in which we have Putin and Ukraine and a pandemic and all of that. To explain all of that is Editor-in-Chief of Invested Media, Caleb Silver. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Good to be with you.
So I want to just talk, first of all, let's talk about the jobs report, but I want you to help me put it into the broader context here. You know, we are looking at such a strange moment. To me, you know, who reads jobs reports all the time, this one just didn't make sense. On the one hand, it looks like, you know, oh, things are going pretty well, things are okay, but weird little pieces of information are in there. People having to scale back to a part-time job because of the changing conditions of their employers. We're talking to Parks Department people who can't hire lifeguards for the first time in their lives. I mean, something strange is going on here, and I wonder how you reacted to today's numbers.
Very much like you did. On the surface, the numbers were better than we expected. We were expecting about 330,000. We got 390,000. The 12-month average is over 400,000 jobs, though, every month going back to the past year. You got to go all the way back to 1938 to find a strong streak like that. But look at where we're coming from, right? There are still 11.4 million job openings in the United States, even though we're only about 800,000 jobs below the pre-pandemic level. So there's a lot of disconnects there. We see rising wages. We've been seeing that every month for the past 18 months. That's great. But as your graphic just noted, not keeping up with inflation. So those higher wages are going to leisure and hospitality jobs, restaurant jobs in general, hotel jobs in general. So those are lower paying jobs. And those jobs, those incomes are not keeping up with inflation. A lot of peculiarities here. Still good to see a big number and good to see the unemployment rate where it is, but labor force participation is still pretty low.
Well, tell me about that, because that's the part I don't understand, right? We had the pandemic, which crushed small businesses all across America. It crushed retail, it crushed hospitality. People fell out of those jobs, or perhaps they became sick and had to leave, or perhaps they took retirement early. that would logically, right, the screenwriter part of my brain goes, well, then those characters would re-enter the movie once the pandemic is over. But that is not what's happening. How do you think about this? Why aren't people taking the jobs that are available?
It's a great question, and some of it is they don't want to go back to the jobs that they were in. They think the grass might be greener and they can get higher paying jobs elsewhere, or they like the flexibility that they enjoyed over the past couple of years. And a lot of companies, Tesla notably, are not putting up with that at all anymore. They want their workers back in the office. Folks have moved away from the cities where their offices are located and are not ready to move back. They've uprooted their lives. And then you have COVID. That's taken a lot of people out of the workforce. But you have long COVID too, which is a very interesting phenomenon where people are just not feeling 100% and don't want to work full time. So you see the average hourly work weeks being reduced because of that in some industries in particular. So a lot of weird dynamics going on at the same time, yet there are so many small businesses, restaurants, and hotels that are still looking for workers. You see restaurants closing earlier than usual, not opening on certain days. They just can't staff it appropriately, and they're the ones that are raising the wages, but folks don't want to go back to those jobs by and large.
As I was reading the jobs report this morning, I was looking at the numbers, and this one chart popped out, and I want to show it to you so we can think about it together. This is the long-term non-farm payrolls, right? The number of jobs out there, people working jobs. There it is, rising from 2000 until 2020. That's when the pandemic hits, and then it falls off a cliff. And I look at that slow ascent that we saw, this steady ascent, and I think all the economic models, all the simulations, all the forecasting tools that we have, they would all work during that time. But then you have it fall off a cliff right there. I mean, one fact that jumped out at me, one data point that jumped out at me in this report was 1.2 million people right now are no longer in the workforce like they used to be. Well, think about how many people were killed by COVID. 1 million Americans killed by COVID. About 300,000 of those estimated to have been workers at the time. And so I wonder for you, how much of a black swan moment is this, right? One that sort of blows up our ability to see what's coming in the future.
That's a great way to describe it. That black swan event is one you can't predict. It comes out of nowhere, and it changes the paradigm. So it's very easy, or it was easy, not easy, to shut off the economy when COVID hit, when we had to come home from work, when we had to stay home and bring our kids home from school. You could switch off the economy, but you can't switch it back on like a light switch. It takes time to get traction. And in those past 2 years, the economy's changed a lot. Think about how we work, where we work, what we expect to get paid to work, the types of jobs that are available. A lot of that changed a lot in the past 2 years. So I think that's where some of the disconnect is. And then I think you mentioned a lot of over 1 million people died from COVID. They're obviously out of the workforce. But think about the family disruption that happens when that happens. Folks have to regroup, families have to regroup. They don't want to go back to the same lifestyle, but either they can't afford it or it's just not possible anymore. So you have some disconnect there as well. And you have folks who are just not willing to go back to the lifestyle that they were living before all this happened. So it's a completely different paradigm in the American economy right now. On the one hand, it looks really good for workers because wages have been rising. But on the other hand, we're dealing with higher inflation on nearly everywhere we look. So it's a very peculiar time in the U.S. economy. And this jobs report kind of showed it front and center.
Caleb Silver helping us decode a very strange moment in the history of the American economy. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Now, tonight, Trump-backed TV star doctor, those are strange words to read together, Mehmet Oz, has won the Pennsylvania Republican primary for Senate. He did so after hedge fund manager David McCormick conceded earlier tonight. Dr. Oz had a razor-thin lead of fewer than 1,000 votes. Now, before last week's recount began, but now McCormick has decided to concede just a few days before those results were to be released. Oz will now face Pennsylvania Lieutenant Governor and Democratic nominee John Fetterman in the general election this November. Now, former Trump advisor Peter Navarro made his first appearance in federal court today. Navarro was indicted by the Department of Justice on contempt of Congress charges after refusing to comply with a subpoena back in February. Our Sahil Kapoor has more.
That's right, Jake. Peter Navarro appeared in court today after he was indicted on 2 counts of contempt of Congress for failing to comply with a subpoena, one for refusing to show up to a deposition scheduled testimony, and and another for refusing to produce documents requested by the committee. Members of the January 6th panel were encouraged by this, with one of them, Adam Schiff, saying it's necessary that DOJ's enforcement, that is, of a subpoena is necessary for Congress to carry out its oversight role as envisioned by the framers. Now, who is Peter Navarro? He is a former trade advisor in the Trump White House who has said publicly on numerous occasions that he worked within the White House to try to overturn the result of the 2020 election after Donald Trump had lost to Joe Biden. He had talked about how he was working with Steve Bannon, a Trump ally and a former advisor, to how he had lined up more than 100 lawmakers toward that cause, and how Trump himself was supportive of that broader effort. The committee looked at that and said, you have information that is directly pertinent to our investigation, and they asked him for answers. He did not provide those answers, and now the Justice Department has charged him. He's only the second person, the other being Steve Bannon, to be charged by the Justice Department. Members of the committee hope that this will be the start of a more aggressive approach by the Justice Department and Attorney General Merrick Garland in enforcing the subpoenas, which some members of that panel have been frustrated in what they see as a lack of enforcement from the DOJ. What's next remains to be seen, but we do know that this committee is going to begin their public hearings next week. The first one is on Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. They promise that there will be unseen material revealed at that hearing as they try to convey to the public what happened on January 6th. Not only the violence of that day in this Capitol complex, but everything that led up to it, the plot to overturn the election, the extent to which then President Trump was involved and encouraged efforts to remain in power even though he had lost that election. Jake?
Sahil Kapoor with the indictment of former Trump trade advisor Peter Navarro. Thank you, Sahil. Now, when it comes to jobs, teens are in high demand this summer. But the question is, will they show up? We'll take a look when we come back. We got a first glimpse today at a draft of a bipartisan federal digital privacy bill. It's called the American Data Privacy and Protection Act. It would require companies to minimize the data they collect, and it bans targeted advertising to children under 17 years old. It would also allow people to sue companies for violations under certain circumstances. These are big proposals. A group of bipartisan committee leaders in both the House and Senate are working on the framework before officially introducing the legislation. We told you earlier about all the job openings right now, and it's especially true for teenagers. Big chains are hiring in the tens of thousands. Some are even offering raises and quick promotions to young people. But the question is, will they show up? Here's CNBC's Kate Rogers.
Summer is typically peak time for teens and seasonal hiring, but COVID had dampened that trend last year, with 41% fewer teens finding jobs than they did in 2020. Challenger Gray and Christmas predicts teens will gain 1.3 million jobs this summer, which is on par with last year's teen job market. But for those who are willing to work, the jobs are certainly there, along with higher pay and perks like flexibility. Data from Gusto show that through April, wages for teen workers were increasing nearly 4 times faster than the average amongst all workers, as firms lean into teen hiring to fill the gap. Jennifer Sutton has done just that at her small business, Guest House Juicery in Park City, Utah. Her workers are between 15 and 17 years old and making up to $14 an hour plus tips. That's more than double the local minimum wage. They also know what they want.
I think because we foster a pretty social, high vibe environment here, that's appealing to them. However, it does not mean that there's an option to pay them less or dump more hours onto them. They're coming in, they're looking for work, but they're making asks in what they're looking for. They want flexibility, they want to be able to take summer vacations, and they know they can get competitive pay. So that's something that's been very apparent as I've started to interview for our summer staff.
And teen workers like Chloe Biggers are seeing raises and new opportunities for sticking around in jobs for more than just the season. And even teens are feeling the impacts of inflation.
Ever since kind of the inflations with COVID and everything that's going on worldwide right now, prices have definitely inflated. So those pay raises definitely do help, and the extra hours definitely do help, especially when I want to go out with friends.
So as you can see, well worth it for many of these teen job seekers to get out there, apply for jobs, and even ask for potentially higher pay and more flexibility with scheduling. Back over to you.
Thank you, CNBC's Kate Rogers. And with that, your weekend can begin. It's been an incredible privilege to be with this team and in this seat. Until we meet again, I'm Jake Ward. Good night.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.